What are we discussing on today's Locked On Diamondbacks podcast? Talking about the Dbacks getting their retribution against the Texas Rangers with Locked On Rangers host Brice Paterik.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Millard Thomas, host of this wonderful podcast. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter and Instagram, for the podcast handle. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube.
Now we are recording immediately after the absolute butt-kickingest game that I have seen at the hands of the Rangers this season. 14-4 drubbing by the Arizona Diamondbacks. A win for the Dbacks, not for the Rangers, unfortunately. And if my math is mathing correctly, I believe the Diamondbacks had 9 extra base hits of the 16 hits they had, which did tie the Rangers' 9 total hits in this one. So you could basically say it was 10 extra base hits. So the Diamondbacks did outpace the Rangers with their extra base hits. The Rangers had regular hits, only 2 extra base hits for the Rangers. A home run by Marcus Semien, his 20th of the season, Adolis Garcia's 25th home run of the season. I knew that the D-backs offense was clicking and was the best in baseball since the All-Star break. But to know that in my head is different. To see it playing out like this, I mean, is this just what the D-backs do right now, or did the Rangers just poop the bed spectacularly?
I mean, this kind of has been the D-backs offense since about July 1st. You can even go back since June 1st. The D-backs have the best record since then. But yeah, over the last couple months, I mean, this D-backs offense is like flipped the switch. They got a little cold over the last 10 days because Marte was out, Gurriel, Walker, they had so many injuries. But as you saw in this Ranger series, Walker's back, Marte's back. We saw Walker with the 2 bombs in game number 1. We saw Marte get it going today as well. The D-backs had a fantastic, I can't speak right now. The D-backs had a fantastic series against this Texas Rangers team. And like you mentioned, I actually think they had even more extra base hits than you just mentioned, Brice. I think they had 12 extra base hits in the game. I think they were 1 away from their franchise record for a single season game. It was insane. And one of the stars in this game, who has been a star for the D-backs over the last couple months, Eugenio Suarez. I don't know if I need to go through I need Sarah Lang to do some stat research for me, because I need to see a player who's had a worse first 80 games of their first half of the season, and then the turnaround that Suarez has had, because his first 87 games, he was quite literally a guy who shouldn't be on a major league roster. Now, over his last 65 games, he's been the best player in the National League. Those aren't hyperboles. He went from the worst player in the sport to the best player in the sport. That's how crazy of a turnaround it's been for Eugenio Suarez. And going against the Texas Rangers in this series, I know the D-backs really wanted this win. One, because, of course, they're in a very tight wild card race with the New York Mets and the San Diego Padres. But number 2, the Rangers have beaten their butts so much recently. Of course, you got the World Series. And then even earlier this year at Texas, the Rangers had a 2-game sweep against the D-backs. So nice to see the D-backs get a little bit of revenge and get a 2-game sweep against Texas.
Yeah, this D-backs offense is fantastic. And you know what? I really like the Diamondbacks. I mean, I feel like our World Series was one of those ones where there's not really any bad blood between it, just a really good World Series that I think was closer than a lot of people, even in retrospect, sometimes I feel like, oh no, the Rangers, they only lost 1 game, but all of those games were very, very close. There wasn't a whole lot of bad blood or whatever. So I have good feelings towards the D-backs. And one thing that I will say is a very big positive for this D-backs offense, and why I think they'll succeed in the postseason like the Rangers did, is because it reminds me of the 2023 Rangers offense, in that there's one elite, exceptional talent in Ketel Marte, and well, the Rangers had Corey Seager. And then they go about 7-8 hitters deep of pretty good hitters. And for me, I like that kind of an offense better. I think it, lends itself to being a more well-rounded, more consistent, just better overall offense, a better product, and more dangerous in the postseason than an offense that's kind of top heavy, like, say the Dodgers or sometimes the Phillies. Like, I'd rather have, instead of having, like, take the Dodgers specifically, 3 of the best hitters on the planet. There's no way around it. I mean, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, those are 3 of the best hitters on the planet. But you look at, 4 through 9, they have some depth there, and then they're, getting more healthy. But for a large stretch of the season, everyone, besides after Teoscar Hernandez, who was hitting cleanup for them, I mean, 5 through 9 was just not very good. But you look at this D-backs lineup, and it's like 7-8 guys deep that are all pretty good. And, their number 9 hole hitter is Geraldo Perdomo, who is about a league average hitter. If you have everybody on your team that's at least league average as a hitter, and like 5 to 6 guys that are, 10-15% above league average, I think it should be the way to build your offense, as opposed to just going for, a couple of stars, because even those guys have cold stretches. And, with the Rangers, when they had a couple guys would have a bad month, or Seager would miss some time, there was plenty of depth in there. And I think, is that how you see this D-backs offense, of just there's no holes, there's no let up for pitchers?
No, I think the depth is like the greatest point you can make when talking about this D-backs team, because like you mentioned, we saw Randall Grichuk today have a great game for the D-backs, hit a home run. He's the D-backs 4th outfielder, with Gurriel, with Carroll, with I'm already forgetting Jake McCarthy. Like, those 3 guys are the 3 everyday starting outfielders, and Grichuk is just coming off the bench. He has like near 1,000 OPS, or runners in scoring position, this season. Like, he leads the league in pinch hits. He's been incredible. Adrian Del Castillo gets called up from the minor leagues. We all saw him get a big home run in this game today. He's been incredible offensively since Moreno has gone down. We're now at the trade deadline, traded for Josh Bell. He's just chilling on the bench. Josh Bell's a guy with like 35 home run potential, and he might not even make the postseason roster. That's how deep this D-backs team is. And I think that organizational depth that Mike Hazen has been able to build over the last couple of years, I think that's a great point by you, Brice, because this D-backs team, you look up and down from the lineup to the rotation, there's bullpen. There's just depth everywhere. There's just quality talent everywhere. And I think that's the best thing you could do. Just have at least a good quality major leaguer at every position. And that's really how you want to build your team. And I like the comparison to the Texas Rangers. I could see Corbin Carroll being like our version of like Marcus Semien in terms of like that profile. And then Christian Walker could be like their Dallas Garcia for our team. So I actually really do like that comparison between our 2 squads.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you hope that comparison doesn't lend itself to the 2025 Diamondbacks just all falling off a cliff offensively, because that's what's happened with this Rangers team. They are missing Corey Seager. He has been out with a hip injury since, I believe, 2 weeks ago. I don't know. The time has gone very slowly when you're not having fun. The exact opposite of what you would like time to be doing. I mean, Marcus Semien has had a really down year offensively. Defensively, he's still been stellar. And you look across the board, and well, Wyatt Langford's a rookie, but I mean, basically everybody on this roster outside of Josh Smith has had, if not a career worst year, then a well below their career average year. I mean, Jonah Heim is just having a dreadful offensive season. He was an all-star last year. And, I was complaining that he wasn't high enough in the top 100 players ranked in the game right now by MLB Network. And, in terms of, I believe it's WRC plus, he is the worst qualified hitter in baseball this year, to the point where the Rangers needed to make a trade for Carson Kelly. I mean, they still had hopes as recently. Yeah, a former Diamondback great, as recently as last year. And the Rangers had, playoff hopes as recently as, the trade deadline. And since then, it has not gone well for them. Speaking of people it has not gone well for, this was not a great day for Cody Bradford. The worst start of his season. We're going to get into why that was. Was it that the Diamondbacks offense is just that good? Or was there something different going on with Cody Bradford for this start in his previous ones? We'll talk about that right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more on or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch those winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get in on the action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia as well. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus because it is guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. The show is also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the #1 sportsbook in America. Well, we got something a little bit different for you this week because now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel anytime. FanDuel's got all kinds of great odds on playoff stuff, which unfortunately the Rangers are not on there because unfortunately they are not very good this year. Right now, 2024 World Series odds, the Diamondbacks are, I believe, 11th at plus 2,700, a little bit behind the Milwaukee Brewers, a little bit ahead of the Kansas City Royals, also behind the Twins, Guardians, Braves, Padres, Astros, Orioles, Dodgers, Phillies, and Yankees. Not in that order. There are also some MVP picks. I know if I had an MVP vote, Ketel Marte would definitely be someone that I'm considering. So check out all the action. Visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Now, shout out to the everydayers for making Locked On Rangers and Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every single day. The Rangers take on the Mariners tomorrow. Kumar Rocker's debut you can catch at 8:40 p.m. Central Time, and I think the Diamondbacks are playing somebody at some point in the future. But you can catch every pitch of the hometown broadcast for all of the games on Sirius XM. Just download the SXM app and search Rangers or Dbacks. Now, Cody Bradford has been a big developmental win for the Texas Rangers this year. They have been a team that has not developed any homegrown starting pitching worth much of anything. And this year, Bradford has been the breakout guy, cementing himself as a legitimate, competent starting pitcher at the big league level. He has had nothing but great starts so far this year. And then he comes up against this absolute buzzsaw of the Diamondbacks. And while Cody Bradford, I'm still a believer. I will always be a Cody Bradford truther, believer. 3 2/3 innings for him in this one. No walks, 9 hits, 8 runs, all of them earned, 3 home runs, and just so much hard contact. It's a little frightening. And Bradford's not a guy who throws very hard. His stuff isn't necessarily super elite. So the margin for error with him is much smaller. If he leaves a fastball and misses location by an inch or two, when you're throwing 90, you don't get away with that as much if you're throwing 98. And this D-backs lineup, like we said, is just on fire. But for me, just seeing Bradford get this rocked, I mean, some of it, I think some of it, not all of this, was due to a little bit of pitch tipping or just sequencing that the Diamondbacks really had figured out, because there were quite a few pitches, especially the breaking stuff early on, that the Diamondbacks were just jumping on. First pitch, curveball, a couple of times Ketel Marte had hits off of those. I think he knew it was coming, either the sequencing or something that Cody Bradford was doing was kind of tipping them off. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Millard? Is this just the Diamondbacks are just so good and I'm being a hater, or is it was there maybe a little bit of that involved?
No, I think some of it just a product of this D-backs offense. Just really in a mode where they're clicking right now. Like we mentioned earlier, this team is just so deep, and the quality of at bats that they get from each and every single guy in their lineup. I want to give some credit to just this D-backs offense doing what they normally do over the last couple months. I mean, they've done this to so many different pitchers. And a guy like Bradford, like you said, he's very good, but his fastball is topping out around 90 miles per hour. So if you're not going to make those perfect pitches, then he made a couple mistakes in the middle of the zone that the D-backs right now. I mean, if you're pitching to Suarez or Grichuk, Corbin Carroll, even a guy like Pavin Smith, and you make a mistake, they might kill you. So I think that's what we saw today from Bradford. But yeah, if he's a young guy and the Rangers finally developed someone, as we were talking a little bit off air, I started Bradford today because I liked what I seen from him recently. I'm in a big fancy playoff matchup going against someone that has been undefeated all season long, and Bradford definitely crapped the bed a little bit for me today. But as the Locked On D-backs guy, maybe I should have expected that. And for the D-backs side, I mean, we saw their starter, Merrill Kelly, actually leave this game earlier today with maybe some cramps or some hamstring tightness. Not too sure what it is. This is a guy that spent a lot of time on the injured list this season. So just more of the merry-go-round for this D-backs rotation, which has been very up and down since getting fully healthy, having a full rotation finally. It's been very up and down. And one of the dudes who has not been good for the D-backs this season is former Texas Rangers World Series winner Jordan Montgomery. When you see Monty on the D-backs and you see his struggles, how much do you say, what happened to this guy? Is it the weight, or how much do you actually put into the blame that, he missed his whole offseason program? Is that like something you're going to be watching out for as like a Texas Rangers fan when you're looking to free agency? You're going to be like, you know what? Let's not get the guy who didn't pitch or train all offseason and then sign him a day before the regular season.
As a Jordan Montgomery truther and lover, yes, I place all the blame on Scott Boras. It is entirely Scott Boras. There is no fault on my beloved, perfect Jordan Montgomery. No, I think that's definitely got a big part of it. I mean, just the shock factor. I mean, I haven't watched a whole lot of D-backs game. I watched a decent amount, but I tuned into a few different Jordan Montgomery starts just because, he's always going to hold a special place in my heart. I mean, one of, I'd say the best part-time Ranger of a guy who was there for a rental, and he came at the trade deadline, was fantastic through the rest of the regular season. I mean, I'm sure you remember that start in Arizona in the regular season where he went 8 shutout innings, and then the D-backs took it to the Rangers and eventually walked them off. That game-tying home run from Ketel Marte off of Aroldis Chapman when the Rangers were just in their worst stretch of the season and desperately needed a win to get 8 shutout innings from Monty, and the Rangers lose that game. I think that might have been the regular season game that made me tear my hair out the most. But yeah, and you see him come into this game with an 8-run lead, and you're like, is this what Jordan Montgomery's been relegated to? I mean, it's just crazy. And I mean, he really does have a point of Scott Boras completely misreading the market for him and for Blake Snell. Both of those guys coming off fantastic seasons. I mean, Montgomery, it pitches in the postseason like an absolute hero. Didn't have the best start in the World Series against the Diamondbacks. But I mean, he was fantastic in the ALCS. Not super great in his one start against the Orioles, but the Rangers were blowing that, so it didn't matter, and really set the tone in game 1 of the entire playoffs for the Rangers in that AL wildcard game against the Rays in Tampa. He was phenomenal. The Rangers do not get to the playoffs. They do not win the World Series. They do not get through the playoffs, and they definitely don't win the World Series without Jordan Montgomery. I mean, he is going to be coming off. There's not going to be a lot of interest in Jordan Montgomery in free agency.
And the sad part is he has like a $25 million player option. So I'm not even sure if it's like a choice for the D-backs. Yeah, I think it's like $25 million. I gotta double check, make sure it's not like a mutual option, but I think it's a player option that he has. I was looking at like the Spotrac the other day.
Yeah, Spotrac had it. I was confused by it. I wasn't sure if there was like a mutual option or whatever. I thought it was just a 1-year $25 million deal. If he's a full on free agent. If he has a player option for $25 million next year, there's no way in heck that he is not taking that, because nobody's giving him $25 million this offseason coming off of the year that he's had. We actually shout out to Jordan Montgomery getting credit for the save in this game because he pitched the final 3 innings. And if you win and you pitch the final 3 innings, no matter how far ahead your team is, you get credit for the save. But definitely someone I think the Rangers would consider a buy low deal on. I mean, right now their rotation for next year is looking like Jacob deGrom, assuming they don't sign anybody and Evo leaves in free agency. Jacob deGrom, Tyler Mahle, John Gray, Cody Bradford, Kamar Rocker, Jack Leiter. That's 6 guys already. But a lot of them don't have a super long history of durability. I mean, deGrom included, Mahle included, Gray included. Rocker is coming off of, he'll pitch maybe 50 innings this year is about the target. I don't see him throwing 200 innings and 30 starts next year, as much as I would love that for Rocker in his first full MLB season. But Monty's a good depth piece that I think the Rangers would at least kick the tires on if he is a free agent and does not exercise that option to go back to the Dbacks. And if he does, like, I still think there's a very good pitcher in there in Jordan Montgomery. I mean, next year he's probably, I don't know what your read is on him getting left off the playoff roster or not, but he's just such a big moment guy, and he knows what it's like and what it takes. I don't think you're going to be starting him game 1 of a playoff series, or maybe probably at all. But still having a guy like him as a weapon out there, it's really sad to see, the kind of season that he's had, but it doesn't tarnish any of those great memories for me with his tenure with the Rangers.
Yeah, he's probably still a playoff guy, but, it's getting a little borderline. But I don't think we probably have a better option than him right now. 3rd lefty in the pen. So I'm fine with him being on a playoff roster for now. I do have a question for you, Brice, about the status of the Rangers this season and what it means moving forward for your ball club. But I think I'll save my question for segment number 3.
That's a good start. Yeah, we will talk about that right after this word from our sponsors.
And hey, for those of us who thrive on getting stuff done, including workouts, every minute counts. That's why you need Tonal, the smart strength training system that takes the guesswork out of working out so you can make sure you're making the most out of every rep. Tonal is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps you get stronger, powered by AI. Tonal learns with every rep so you can deliver workouts personalized just for you. Tonal learns from your movements and provides suggested weight recommendations for every move with detailed progress reports. They even create personalized programs and workout suggestions of recommendations based on your individual goals. It's just like having a personal trainer at home with you, as Tonal will optimize every workout just for you. Unlike traditional gym equipment, Tonal uses adaptive digital weight to advance your training techniques. From professional athletes to the Mama 3, Tonal is trusted by thousands who became their strongest. Right now, Tonal is offering our listeners $200 off your Tonal purchase with promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Tonal.com, and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off your purchase. That's Tonal.com. Promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off.
Now, Millard, I believe you had a question for me before we teased into that break.
Yes, because we were talking a little bit earlier, and you said, I hope, the Dbacks don't get the 2025 Rangers curse of what the offense is going through. But I'll take this Rangers curse if it means I get the World Series in 2024. So I think I already know your answer to this question, but does this season of what you're going through make it all worth it, knowing you sacrificed this season for the World Series ring in 2024? And then part 2 to that question, how long does this shine of a World Series last? Like, how many years of your team being bad and missing the playoffs can you just say, well, we won the World Series in 2024, 2023? Like, how long does the shine of a World Series last? That's the second question. That's a follow-up to my first question, I should say. Well,
the first question is absolutely yes. I mean, 100 1,000%. I mean, Rangers in baseball, like it has always been my diehard big sports guy in general, but like Rangers has always been my first love. It is the thing that made me love sports in general. And with all the heartbreaking Rangers playoff losses, it was something that I kind of thought, okay, this is just never going to happen. Like it's just not happening for the Rangers, and that's okay. Like I still love baseball. Like it's still something that I obsess over. Even if I wasn't doing this job, I would still be maybe not living and dying with. I probably would have turned this game off a lot sooner if I wasn't doing this podcast. But still, like I said it before the World Series, before the playoffs. I'm like, if the Rangers win a World Series, they could be 0-1, 60, whatever, forever, and it would still be worth it. And I stand by that. Like it's not fun. I'm still watching it, and I'm so frustrated by this season, obviously. But as for how long the shine lasts, it's still lasting. It lasted a little bit less long of me, saying I'm never going to say a bad thing about the Raiders ever again. That was not true. That was deeply untrue, and it didn't take long for that to happen. Given the frustration with the offseason, the not bringing back Jordan Montgomery, turns out Chris Young knew what he was doing, or maybe it would have gone completely differently if the Rangers signed him immediately after at the championship parade. But this season has been very frustrating because it's been like exactly the same roster and just everyone has fallen off a cliff. And I mean, the whole tenor of the season was just hang on until those big arms get back in DeGrom, in Scherzer, and even in Malley. And they got 3 starts of Malley and he wasn't that great. Scherzer was supposed to come back earlier, didn't come back till about when they expected. Then he came back for 8 starts, I believe, and went back on the IL right before saying this isn't going to need an IL stint. Narrator, that was untrue. And then DeGrom this is about what I was hoping for DeGrom to come back. So as for, I'm giving them this whole year just for me emotionally and holding that space of like, okay, like this is what it is. The offense just all fell off a cliff. I don't think they're going to do that again next year, especially when they're not having a month-long, postseason run. But I'm curious. I mean, that has been the excuse pretty much all year of, these guys, they hadn't been on long postseason runs or most of them in their career. And the Diamondbacks played just as many games. Actually, I think they might have played more games than the Rangers in the postseason. I mean, they played just as long into last year. How has that affected your team? Let me finish up by actually answering your question of how long it's going to last. I give them the year. If they're crap again next year, I'm probably going to start to get mad. And if they're really bad for 3 years in a row with this same core, then I'm going to be like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm mad at everything. But how is this that extended postseason run affected the Dbacks? They played pretty long as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, obviously, when you look at the Dbacks now, they seem like a really good team. Their offense over the last couple months has been on fire. But you look at the Dbacks, like what their record was at one point mid-June, like this team was many games below 500. This was a team that was fighting and scratching just to get into the wild card conversation. Corbin Carroll was terrible the first half of the season. Guys like Zach Gallen was struggling early on, looking a little rusty. Merrill Kelly got hurt early on. Like how much of that was just the fact that some of those guys, like you just mentioned, played the full season, went deeper than ever? Is that why we saw Gallen struggle to begin the year? Is that why Kelly got hurt? Is that why Carroll struggled? I'm not too sure, but the D-backs eventually worked through those struggles that we saw in the first half, thankfully, and then turned around their season. Now they are on pace to really enter the playoffs in a very strong standpoint. Hopefully their rotation can get healthy and better, but this has been a complete season turnaround. I do think when you look at guys like potentially Brandon Pfaadt, a second-year guy, he pitched he didn't pitch the full season last year, but technically first full season this year after pitching to the postseason last year. He seems like he's starting to hit a wall right now. Maybe that's a guy you look at and say, you know what? Maybe all the pitching he's done over the last 18 months, maybe that's starting to, wear on him a little bit right now. But I think for the most part, this team went through their World Series hangover struggles despite not winning in the first half of the season. And now I think they're gearing up for a second potential World Series run.
Yeah, I definitely see this D-backs team going on a deep run. I mean, the National League is really, really talented. I mean, there's a lot of really good teams there fighting for those wild card spots, and maybe the D-backs will end up chasing down the Dodgers. I know that is still a possibility, and I think like it also helps bringing in some new guys. I mean, that's also the thing that I think happens a lot with teams that make it to the World Series and don't end up winning. They're a lot more aggressive in their offseason. It's like, we are right there. The window is open. We need to go batter this thing down. That's why you go in and you get a Jordan Montgomery, why you go out and sign an Eduardo Rodriguez, why you trade for an Eugenio Suarez. I mean, those are all been, well, two of those three have not been great acquisition. I liked them at the time. Suarez, like you said, has been really, really coming on. It was looking like all three of those moves were going to be absolute disasters. Turns out it just needed some time for Eugenio Suarez to get going and get acclimated. I mean, his OPS has jumped up at least 14 points in this one game. It's over 800 now, and I'm looking at the Baseball Reference page.
Really?
It's at 786 because it hasn't updated with today's three home runs that he hit. But I really liked the Diamondbacks off season, and I was optimistic about them repeating. I mean, last year, the same thing was said about both of our teams all throughout the postseason of, oh, this is a cute story. Look at these teams, just sneaking in there on the last day or whatever, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I don't know how really good they are. And people really underestimated how good both of those teams were. I mean, the Rangers had a stretch for the first, 80 something games really until that, mid-August, just absolute free fall where they were one of, if not the best teams in baseball. The Diamondbacks had a stretch of 80 or 90 games where they were the best team in baseball last year. And, it wasn't the cleanest route into the playoffs and their overall record and, run differential didn't look great, but they had stretches where they were absolutely dominant. And, do you think people have been taking these two teams, I guess more so your team, more seriously this year? Because the Rangers have been underestimated this year. And unfortunately, that was the correct estimation.
I'm definitely biased, but I still feel like the D-backs are being disrespected and a little overlooked. I mean, you mentioned the FanDuel odds just a second ago. The D-backs were 11th in World Series odds behind teams like the Milwaukee Brewers, who the D-backs swept last year in the postseason. The Brewers have gotten worse. The D-backs have gotten better, and we still think Milwaukee has a higher World Series chance than the D-backs. No way. I think there's still way too many teams when looking at World Series odds that we think, wait, that team actually has a higher ceiling and more championship equity than the team that just won the National League? I don't think so. So I still think they're a little overlooked. I'm not saying the D-backs are the best team in baseball, but I do think they're the scariest team in the National League entering the postseason. And I want to know if you agree with that statement, Brice.
Honestly, right now, yeah. I mean, I think you might be discounting the Brewers a little bit. They have the best record in baseball, and I think the best run differential in the National League. I do think they did get better with this year with their young superstar, but I do still think that the D-backs are better. I think, if I was betting on a team to win the National League this year, I am probably leaning towards the D-backs, because if this offense is anywhere near what they were doing today, anywhere near it, I mean, as much as I love Cody Bradford, and as much as some people might be poo-pooing this as, oh, they beat up on Cody Bradford and Chase Anderson and Owen White, the way these bats are swinging right now, they could do that to just about anybody, which makes me very glad that Kumar Rocker is making his MLB debut against the Seattle Mariners offense, and also in Seattle and not against this team, and DeGrom making his season debut in Seattle and not against this team, because my goodness, these D-backs are hungry. They are scary. They are coming for that title. And by golly, I think they might just get it this year. Millard, thank you for helping me talk about this absolute disaster of a series. Best wishes to you and the Diamondbacks moving forward. It's going to be a fun postseason run that unfortunately my team will be watching from their couches. Thank you all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers, and maybe next year in October, World Series champion Arizona Diamondbacks baseball.